Hi, I'm Jen Katz, nutritionist, and today we're going to talk about basic nutrition. And we'll start by talking about our macronutrients, which are basically our three food groups. So despite what most people think, there are not 5 food groups. There are 3 groups of different types of food, and every food that you can think of will fall under one of those 3 categories. So we'll start with carbohydrates, then we'll go into proteins, and then we'll go into fats. We'll talk about the basic structure, how they're metabolized, and some examples of each one. So carbohydrates are our sugars, our only sources of sugar that the body has. We have simple carbs, we have complex carbs, we have low glycemic carbs and high glycemic carbs. And I'll explain what all of those are in just a moment. So again, despite what most people think, carbs are not just flour-based products like crackers, cookies, candy, breads, pasta. Those are processed carbs. We get carbohydrates from a lot of other sources as well, and what most people don't realize is those carbs are vegetables, fruits, beans, legumes. We have brown rice under that category. We have all the hearty, whole grain-based items are carbohydrates as well. Some people think that they are fibers. So fiber falls under the category of carbs. A fiber is a type of carbohydrate, and a fiber is what makes a carbohydrate complex. So we'll start with the complex ones. And complex aren't better than simple, they're just metabolized in a different way, and depending on who you are, you may want to eat complex over simple carbs at a given time and in given combinations. So the complex carbs are those that take the body longer to digest. They give you some work to do. They don't just go straight into your belly, into your bloodstream, give you a high spurt of energy and then send you crashing. Simple carbs are really what do that. It's not always a good thing. If we need instant energy, a simple carb will do, but if we want sustainable energy, it's better to go with a complex version of a carbohydrate. So what are those complex versions? Well, we have the brown carbohydrates, so anything that has a fiber in it, something that you're going to chew on. We'll talk about the grain-based ones first. Those would be oatmeal, brown breads, brown rice, really dense carbs that have something that your body needs to work on to digest. And you can see the difference. You look at brown rice versus white rice, or you mush it in your hands. White rice would be more of a simple carbohydrate that just goes straight into the bloodstream really quickly, whereas brown rice takes longer to digest. You can feel it when you chew. You chew on those sort of the fibers, and every grain is encapsulated with a bran. And that's the stuff that sweeps through your body and acts as a fiber and it keeps the carb low glycemic, which means it doesn't have a high sugar impact on your body. So our low glycemic or our simple carbs would be the opposite, those without fiber. And that would be an apple without skin, that would be a piece of white bread, something that's really easy to digest. And a good trick is to sort of imagine it in your hand or imagine it on a stovetop with heat applied. Which one is simple, which one is complex? The complex ones will always take longer to digest and longer to dissolve, versus the simple ones are really easy to even mash up in your hands. So a banana versus apple with skin. A banana is a simple carbohydrate, minus its skin, which we don't eat. So if we take a banana and we try to mechanically mush it down, we're going to break it down to its constituents, its basic constituents, really quickly. You take an apple with skin, it's going to be really hard to do that with just your hands. You need a lot more digestion to work on it, to break it down to its cellulose, to its basic fiber, in order to get the sugar out of the apple. So the difference would be you eat a banana, you get more instant energy. The banana goes into your stomach, gets digested, goes into your bloodstream very quickly, whereas the apple takes a lot more time to get through all that fiber in the skin. So complex carbs would be fruits, all of our vegetables, the veggies that have all those fibers in them. If you imagine celery, kale, spinach, the things that take a lot of chewing to digest, the things that have threads, the cellulose threads, the tough skin that you might ingest, such as on a cucumber or zucchini, asparagus, artichoke leaves, things that are really, really hard to break down to its minimum. Versus our simple carbohydrates, such as a banana, give you instant energy. Are both of them good for you? Yes, they're both good. Do they get metabolized differently? Yes, that's what we've just learned. So is it better to have white rice or brown rice? I get this question a lot. It's better to have the brown rice because it also has nutrition. And we're talking about nutrition here. So we want to eat things that have nutrients inside. The white rice is broken down to its bare minimum already. It's that white carb, starchy, sugar constituent that we're trying to get to when we break down the brown rice, that our body has to do work to get to, and that work expends calories, it expends energy. And at the same time when we use the brown rice, we get a fiber. And fiber is known to reduce cholesterol, keep us regular, keep our water balance, and cling to toxins that we eventually need out of the body. So is white rice bad? It's not bad. It's better to have brown rice because you get a lot more nutrition and it has double function. So going with the complex carbs is generally better. There is a way to make your simple carbs, and we'll go through what those are in just a second. Again, it does encompass a lot more than just a fruit without the skin or a banana. But there's a way to match your simple carbs with other nutrients, to have those in the right combination, to make them more complex, to anchor the sugar that gets produced when you eat them so quickly. So other simple carbs would be things like fruit juices. Fruit juices just go down really easily, go right into the bloodstream. White bread, again, cookies, candies, cakes, anything made of processed flour. Anything where the wheat, if you think about wheat in nature, it's this long wave, this long grain that's really hard to chew. If we try to just pick it out of the ground and chew it, we really can't do that. We just send it through a machine to get digested before it goes into the body. We want our bodies to do as much of that digestion as possible. So the white stuff should generally be set aside and be only eaten at certain times, treat times, or when you're kind of going off your plan. Generally, you want to have the stuff that's tougher to digest. So again, brown breads, whole grain-based breads, whole grain crackers if you have to have crackers. Sprouted grains are better than flour. The difference is the grain isn't put through a refinery. It's actually soaked so that the grain opens up, the fibers soften, the bran softens so that you can actually chew it, and you get the entire grain in there versus just the flour portion, which is the caloric carbohydrate portion. So other simple carbs would include anything that's made of sugar or sugar itself, flour itself, sodas. Again, fruit juices are simple carbs. They're healthy because they have vitamins, but it's better to go with the whole fruit. So if you take an orange versus orange juice, an orange has those thready kind of white cellulose caps around each little segment of the orange, and then it also has a tough skin. That's because it is a complex carb in nature. When you squeeze the water out, you're taking water and sugar out of that orange, disrupting that balance, and you're not giving your body a challenge in digesting it. So high glycemic versus low glycemic isn't necessarily the same as complex versus simple. Okay, so we have complex carbs, again, our whole grains. Beans are complex carbs because they have fiber already in them. Beans also have a little bit of protein, which makes it tougher to digest. Our other complex carbs would be things like whole grains, like we said, but constituted bran would be complex carb. That's the extract, actually the opposite of what we do with white rice or white breads. We take the germ and the bran and we create a supplement which you can add to your white carbs, kind of putting it back together. So simple carbs and complex carbs are not exactly the same as low glycemic and high glycemic. So simple versus complex just means how quickly does the sugar go into your bloodstream. In a simple carb, the sugar is going to go really quickly. In a complex carb, it's going to take a lot longer, pulse out little bits of sugar a couple minutes at a time so you get sustained energy. So what is low glycemic and high glycemic? So within every single carb category, such as our fruits, beans, breads, pastas, etc., we have low glycemic ones and we have high glycemic ones. Good example is fruit. Every fruit is a carbohydrate. There's no exception. Every fruit is a carbohydrate. It turns to sugar in your body. The low glycemic fruits are going to have a lower impact on your bloodstream as the sugar pulses out during digestion. So that would be fruits that consist of a lot of seeds or a tough skin, such as apple, pear, the cellulose fibers in citrus. If you think about berries, berries have a lot of little seeds, a lot of little things to digest. They even have little hairs on them. They have little skin. Any fruit that doesn't have that, such as watermelon. Watermelon can just dissolve in the mouth. Dried fruit is devoid of all the water that makes it low glycemic. So any fruit that doesn't have anything to digest in it, such as banana, again, that's a high glycemic fruit. It's going to have a high impact on your bloodstream, high impact sugar on your bloodstream. The way that it gets loaded into your body is going to be high impact. We want moderate to low impact. So does it mean you should never eat those fruits? No, it just means you should eat them in moderation, and it means that you should pair them with certain foods to make them lower glycemic, and we'll talk about that in just a second. So obvious high glycemic foods would be Coca-Cola, it would be maple syrup, it would be cane sugar, M&Ms, candies, etc. Those are really high glycemic. They give you a rush and then you crash. Are those the healthy ones? No. The best way to anchor your high glycemic carbohydrates to make them lower glycemic is to pair them with a protein and a fat. So let's go through what proteins are. So proteins are amino acids. The basic building blocks are amino acids. Proteins are what feed your muscle. Proteins are what actually keep your blood sugar in balance. They give you sustainable energy. Protein, just like carbohydrates, gives you 4 calories per gram. So the density is purely made up of those amino acids. You're not getting a lot of sugar, but you're still getting energy in the form of amino acids. You can store them for later use, just a little bit, not a lot. So you do need protein every couple of hours as your muscle is repairing. Protein is also responsible for cell repair, such as your hair, skin, nails, eyes. Every time your body rejuvenates, you use protein. So protein turnover is really, really fast. Just walking up and down the stairs 2 times, you need protein, okay? So protein consists of any animal product, any animal muscle meat that we ingest. So that's white meat turkey, dark meat turkey, white meat chicken, dark meat chicken, lean beef, fatty beef, anything that consists of that animal muscle, whether it's lean or not, is going to be protein. We also get protein in eggs, egg whites, protein powders. We get little bits of protein in grains and beans, particularly in the combination, which would be complementary proteins. So for a vegan or vegetarian that doesn't eat animal muscle meat, you can put those 2 together to make a complete protein. And the only difference is that protein, that complementary protein, is going to consist of a lot more carbohydrate because you're using 2 carb bases that have some protein in it. You're marrying the 2 to make a complete protein, but remember you also have carbs in there. So those are the proteins you wouldn't want to use to anchor another carbohydrate, a high glycemic carbohydrate, to make it less glycemic. Protein you might want to use to anchor a banana, let's say, instead of having just a banana for snack because you don't want your bloodstream to rush up with blood sugar, is you can use a low-fat string cheese. You can use a hard-boiled egg. You can use a handful of nuts. Nuts consist of protein as well. So anchoring those with some protein would be good. Your meals should also always consist of some protein. Protein is going to give you that satiety factor that carbohydrates really don't. Even if they are complex carbs, carbs only last so long in the body. You usually need the combination of the 2 to sustain energy. And again, you want that protein to anchor the carbohydrate so that you pulse energy out into your bloodstream slowly instead of a big rush and then a crash. Other proteins include other dairy products such as Greek yogurt. I'm not saying regular yogurt because that's mainly lactose sugar. You want to go with a Greek style that's higher in protein. Cream cheese, low-fat cream cheese. Again, it's not devoid of the protein, it's just devoid of the fat if it's lower in fat. Any cheese, better to go with a low-fat cheese because fats are really dense, which we'll talk about next. And again, beans, legumes, lentils, and grains also consist of a little bit of protein, but you have to marry the 2 to make a complete protein. So what we're talking about there are essential and non-essential amino acids. Because the building blocks of proteins are amino acids, we have essential and non-essential, meaning ones that we can make in our bodies and ones that we actually have to take in from the outside. So we have to make sure that every protein we take in from the outside is complete. If it's incomplete, we have to match it with something else to complete it. And again, the complete proteins would be the animal muscle meats, all animal products, fish, chicken, turkey, beef, bison, buffalo, any animal you would eat, eggs, dairy products, and the incompletes would be the vegetarian-based ones. So you have to marry 2 different ones to get a complete. Nuts and seeds fall somewhere in between. So that takes us into fats. We just mentioned that nuts and seeds are made of fat, and fat has the ability, unlike carbs and proteins, to keep you fuller because we said carbs and proteins yield 4 calories per gram. Fat yields over double that at 9 calories per gram, which is why we just need small amounts through the day. You don't want to sit down to a whole avocado. It's way too much fat. It's very healthy, but for every single gram in there, you're getting 9 calories. That's why you'll see fat grams on, let's say, your jar of peanut butter. 1 little tablespoon has sometimes 18 grams of fat, depending on how it's processed. A tablespoon of olive oil has a ton of fat, in between 9 and 18, again, depending on the serving size in the jar. So let's go through what fats are. Fats are made of triglycerides, which are made of fatty acids. So these get stored in the body by something called cholesterol. We make these little cholesterol rafts from our liver to store our fat in particular places in the body. usually places we don't want it in. So other things, even though they aren't fat, can get stored as fat. Carbohydrates, if they're overeaten, your body will store them. The only storage mechanism for a carbohydrate, other than muscle, that's not a usable form, is fat. So right when you overeat carbs, you get that insulin spike, especially if it's a simple carb or a high glycemic carb that's not anchored, and you're going to store the rest of it as fat generally. So is all fat bad? No, fat is actually essential. Fat is really good. Fat provides insulation. It gives us thermogenesis. It creates heat when we eat it because it does provide that 9 calories per gram. So when we eat fat, that's a signal to our body to release calories because we're getting so many. And it also coats our nerve cells and creates efficient thinking. A lot of people who go low on their fat or too low on their fat actually can't think straight. In order to create a nerve impulse, we need a strong myelin sheath, and that myelin sheath is made of fat. So don't cut fat out of your diet. The take-home message would be you have to limit it because it's so dense. You can get a lot of nutrition out of a small amount. So we do need a little bit of fat, but we don't want to go overboard. So the healthiest fats to eat are avocados. We can make guacamole out of avocados, avocado oil, olives, olive oil, all the nuts and seeds, nut and seed oils that are made from those, nut and seed butters that are made from those. Healthy fat is also found in fish, also found in fish capsules known as omega-3. There's flax seeds and flax oil, which is also a source of omega-3. And coconut and palm oil are saturated fat that are vegetable based, so they're healthier than the saturated fat in butter, cheese, eggs, beef. It's better to ingest that type of saturated fat than it is to ingest the ones that come from meat. The reason being, if we cook these saturated fats, sometimes they're subject to rancidity. And you have to be really careful with the fats that you heat because they can change form. So being careful not to heat unstable fats also, like your fish oil, you never want to heat it. You don't want to cook on too high heat with olive oil. Olive oil is best ingested raw, because again, subjecting these fatty acids to heat creates rancidity. So we have to be really careful. Going light on fat, again, is not a good idea, but as a reference, start to look at your nutrition labels just to see what a serving size of fat is. And you can reference it in the manual as well, but start to look around your kitchen, take a look and see how much you've been spreading on that peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Is it 2 or 3 tablespoons by the time you're done dipping in and making that sandwich, or did you just use 1 serving? So again, 1 serving every single time you eat in the day, which is probably going to be in between 3 and 6 times. 1 small serving as the tiniest portion of your plate needs to be included, but you don't want to go above that. So those will be our 3 macronutrient groups, our carbohydrates, and then we have the different carbs within that, the simple ones, the complex ones. Then we talked about how carbs can be high glycemic and low glycemic. Then we have proteins, and then we have fats. So let's go into where do vitamins and minerals come from? Where do we get those? How do we get the micronutrients that are found in our macronutrients? So carbohydrate micronutrients are really just sugars. Carbs get broken down into smaller constituents just called sugar. Do we get a lot of nutrition from carbohydrates? Yes, if they're brown, and yes, if they're fruits and vegetables. So a lot of our nutrition comes from the pigments and the colors of the carbs that we eat, which is another reason why white carbs should basically be shoved aside. They're non-nutritive. And every time we eat provides an opportunity to give ourselves vitamins, especially if we're not taking supplements. We do need to get vitamins through our food. So the best foods to go for, the best carbs to go for our vitamins would be our fruits, all of those different colors, and rotating them so you get different ones every day. And then our vegetables, of course. Vegetables are actually a better choice because they do give you that pigment, that fiber, and that water without all the sugar attached. So getting your veggies mixed into a big salad, vitamins and minerals like to work together. So all of our vitamins A, D, E, K, which are our fat-soluble vitamins, and then the B's and the C's are our water-soluble vitamins. All of those can be found in all different fruits and vegetables. Combining them is a really good idea so you get the whole spectrum, and again, they all work together. Those aren't the only places that micronutrients are found. So we also get minerals. Minerals are micronutrients that we get from all 3 of these categories. So the minerals that we need to make sure we have every day: calcium, magnesium, zinc, iron, potassium, and sodium are some of the main minerals that we often are deficient in because we're busy eating white foods, right? So the more colors, the better. Calcium comes from dairy. Calcium also mainly comes from green leafy vegetables. Because our dairy is so processed, we really do need to rely on these vegetables for our calcium. can get some in spinach, you can get some in green leafies, you get some in algae, particularly spirulina and chlorella. Most people use a supplement for those unless you eat a lot of seaweed. You can get sodium in a lot of things, and the idea is you want to get sodium from sea salt or sea-based vegetables, sodium from celery and other vegetables versus your iodized table salt. You don't want to use that. So sodium is essential, but going overboard is pretty dangerous. Potassium comes from bananas, potatoes, coconut water. So again, all these colors are what provide our micronutrients, our minerals, and our vitamins. You also get B vitamins, which provide a lot of energy from our animal sources, which is why it's really important to have protein every couple of hours. You get B6, B12, B3, all of those vitamins come from our animal sources. Again, trace amounts found in fruits and vegetables, but mainly from those proteins. And those are our energy boosting vitamins. So we go through the day, we don't just use carbs, we use energy. And we turn over these vitamins really quickly. So most multivitamins that you take as a supplement, you'll see that you're supposed to take an AM dose and a PM dose. So you have to refuel, again, which is why it's smart to eat every few hours. And in combination, we don't get many vitamins from fat. We get vitamin E. We do get a little vitamin D in egg yolk. We can get a little vitamin K also, but it's mainly because these are fat soluble. And vitamin A, which is found in our citrus fruits, it's found in yams, sweet potato, those orange and red pigments, beets, actually requires fat to be absorbed. So fat is a vehicle through which a lot of our other micronutrients can get absorbed in the body. So this is it just goes to show you why a balanced meal is the best thing that you can do. You don't really want to just grab an apple here, piece of turkey later on, handful of spinach later on. Having your balanced meals every few hours is going to ensure that you get all your macros, all your macronutrients in balance, making your carbs low glycemic, and providing all the absorptive capacity that you need, giving you enough protein to get through the day, building your muscle, giving you fat for repair, for neuron repair, for insulation, for thermogenesis. So you get a full spectrum when you eat every couple of hours, balanced meals. So as you can see, eating a combination of these is going to give you the most balance. It's going to keep your blood sugar stable. It's also going to ensure that you not only get all your vitamins and your micronutrients, but you also absorb them. So again, having combinations of colors, having some carbohydrates, some protein, some fat in the right amounts, and that's going to depend on who you are and what your caloric needs are. But having those right ratios every couple of hours is going to ensure that you have the healthiest regimen possible. So thank you for tuning in. You can reference the manuals if you forget, what's in your macronutrient group and what's best for you. Again, it's going to vary individual to individual, but watch the video again and again if you need tips on how to put your foods together, you want to know where to get your vitamins. So just remember to keep it simple. Balance, variety, and moderation are the 3 keys to ensure that you get everything you need every time you eat.